pretty well. So I'm about to introduce Brian here. Brian works on computers are much bigger than the rest of us have access to. It's also, as I understand it, his first event speaking at this scale. So I'd like you to add to his nerves by giving him a raucous welcome.
Hello, my name is Brian May and I'm a Python developer. I'm pleased to announce that I'll be your Karaage expert for the next 25 minutes. This is going to be a talk about an identity management system, not to be confused with FreeIP8, which will be a much better talk on identity management systems being held in the next room. And first, this disclaimer, which I'll talk more about later. So our first question is, what is Karaage? Wikipedia is considered an authoritative source of information. Let's see what Wikipedia says on Karaage. Karaage is deep-fried chicken. Karaage is yum. Unfortunately, this isn't the Karaage I'm going to be talking about. If you decide for chicken, I believe a number of nearby restaurants itself is sort of Karaage. Karaage is a HPC cluster management system. It is open source software initially created in 2008 to automate the management of users on clusters at V3 Alliance, formerly known as VPAC. At this time, users were added by hand to NIS, and we wanted to upgrade to an automatic LDAP solution. A number of sites across Australia now use Karaage for cluster management. Karaage takes inputs from a number of sources and writes the results to one or more data source stores, such as Moab, Slurm, LDAP. Other backends could also be written, e.g. for Kerberos. Karaage also supports storing and reporting on cluster usage information recorded by Slurm and Moab, which is interesting because sites required storing or historic usage information into one database table. And typically you can end up with millions of rows, like 11 million rows one site has. And this means retrieving results can be slow for a web-based system. So my predecessor had a cache table, so the first time you'd access a particular view, it'll cache for information and then display it. So on subsequent views, it would be much faster. Unfortunately, this didn't work for the first time the person tried to access a page. And if you try and access a page and it takes, say, 30 seconds to load, a typical user is going to try and click reload. And this in turn will create another process that will try and generate this information and cache it. And eventually you end up with a situation where you've got more than one result in the cache table, and the Django get method then will return multiple results found every time you try and view it. And of course that isn't going to work. It just crashes. So Tyson from Common Code came up with a solution to this. He's got an aggregated table, so all the information is aggregated on a daily basis, and it substantially reduces the number of rows in the table. And it's part of Karaage 4, so if when Karaage 4 is released, that would be one of the substantial benefits. Anyway, Karaage has been in development for over 8 years, from 2008 through to 2015, when it was my last day at V3 Alliance. The most recent work was to try and make Karaage more general and work with non-free Alliance requirements. Common code, as I mentioned before, updated for database schemas, found bugs, and made improvements to the tests. Then, unfortunately, the funding from VLSCI dried up. At which stage, I took their fork tree, I cleaned up all the changes and merged them into the Karaage 4 branch. Before I get into detail, some important terminology, because otherwise you'll get totally confused. A machine category is a set of clusters which are independent, including independent LDAP servers. Typically, this feature is rarely used now except for V3 Alliance for historic information. A person can have one or more accounts, with each account belonging to a different machine category. As such, each account will get written to a different LDAP server. When I took over Karaage, it met our requirements. However, it was very difficult to understand the code or adapt to our changing demands. There are many improvements I made to simplify the code. For example, what could be simpler than locking an account? All you need to do is set an attribute in LDAP, right? This is what the locking code looks like. First, the view code calls the lock method on person. This in turn calls the OpenLDAP data store, which inherits from LDAP, which in turn inherits from the generic data store class. I'll show you these data store methods in sequence. The OpenLDAP data store method calls a method from Placard, supposedly a generic LDAP library. This method sets the OpenLDAP specific attribute and cannot be used for directory server 389. We also call the inherited method from the LDAP data store. So we've got a generic library, but it's not actually generic, it's specific to OpenLDAP. The LDAP method sets an attribute required for the directory server 389 that is not required for OpenLDAP. It also calls the inherited method for the generic class. And for generic class, we were locking the person, but not the accounts associated with the person. Suddenly we've got to jump back to the top of the stack to request for every account to fix up the accounts now that we've fixed up the people. So now the layers look like this. Note that while we're acting on the accounts, we've bypassed the Django accounts model. So we'll look at the account data store methods. If there's no LDAP code or OpenLDAP specific code, so we use the inherited function. Similarly, if there's no LDAP specific code, so we use the inherited function. And for generic code, we save the current shell in the Django DB model, and then we call the top-level data store method again to change the shell to a specifically defined block shell. So now the simple layer chart looks like this. In other words, it's a complete mess for something that's meant to be very simple. I resolved this by replacing Placard library with my own LDAP library called TLDAP. Then I rewrote the data stores in Karaage to be less LDAP-centric and easier to understand. So you can now use data stores for not just LDAP, you can use them for other backends like Moab or Slurm, or in theory, Kerberos or other things. I made the mistake of attending Andrew Bartlett's talk in LCA 2015. So I'll just quote what he said. Default ACLs. I looked at OpenLDAP and I found the default ACL across the whole directory when you start. The one you're going to build everything else on is 2* by self-write. Seems reasonable enough. It's a phone book. You can update your phone number. Do you want to be able to update your UID number? Hey, Daryl, what number would you like? Anyone for 0? Well, yeah, it's a good thing Karaage got this right. Those people stuffed up in a spectacular way. I wouldn't mess up like that. And for Karaage documentation is good. I use this for all our recent installs, so everything is good, right? Well, just what is in for documentation? 2-star by self-write. Oh, crap. Denial, quick fix to for documentation during the middle of Andrew Bartlett's talk. Make sure the change message doesn't give away anything important because I can't actually update the sites just as yet. Also note that with my tests, I wasn't able to impersonate root. However, any other user is fair game. Upstream LDAP documentation also has bad examples. Now, the main problem was on Debian Installs, which would automatically configure the ACLs by default to bad failures on Debian Wheezy. I made sure security advisories were issued and fixed packages for Debian stable at the time, Wheezy. Note the fixed packages don't fix the ACLs for you, but should warn you if they appear to be insecure when you update the package. Redhat doesn't set up these ACLs by default. However, that doesn't mean Redhat systems won't be vulnerable to this issue. It depends on the system administrator who configured them. Some silly Git issues I've encountered that were driving me insane. So I have a number of changes in my working directory, and I only want to commit one specific change. I stage the changes, and I commit. Oops, I just committed everything and lost my carefully staged changes because commit-a overrides the stage changes and commits everything. I didn't want -a, but I just chose it as automatic muscle memory. Oops. And another silly mistake which I've been making. I want to update the last commit. This time it still didn't work. So I use git commit amend. Only I was supposed to use 2 dashes and only 1 M. So for -a commits everything, and for -m sets a message to mend. So I ended up creating a wrapper for Git to catch if I use the -a flag. And if I do use the -a flag, it checks to make sure there's no stage commits. And this could easily be improved, but it catches my mistakes, which is the main thing. Recently, there have been big changes in V3 Alliance. I was made redundant from V3 Alliance due to reasons unrelated to Karaage. Management went to pains to say it's nothing to do with your performance. As a result, I am no longer involved in its development. What did I learn from my time developing Karaage? Lots of things. My experience of Karaage has taught me a number of lessons when dealing with large projects such as Karaage. I got some things right, such as working out how to fix broken code, which wasn't always obvious how to fix it. And I got some things wrong. There's always been a mistake in Karaage. In fact, it's had lots of installations on different sites. And traditionally, the method of customizing Karaage, just copy that complete file and make local and make the one-line change you want for that site. That, however, meant that any changes in Karaage would break installation when you put it back on this site, because it would change this file, and it would no longer be compatible with the local copy. So it's much better to try and work out a fixed API that remains constant, so you don't have to try and copy the entire file. Rather, you just copy the bit that you need to copy to make the local customizations. And also, there were features I removed along the lines that I removed because they were broken. Well, what's the point of having a broken feature? And I find that a lot of sites were actually relying on them. And rather than remove them, I should have fixed them. So what is the future of Karaage? The future of Karaage depends on the open source community, including organisations like V3 Alliance and VLSCI. So at the moment, I'm not involved in it in any way, unless somebody decides to employ me again. So, any questions?
Does Karaage have sort of a mix of volunteer developers and paid developers, or at least did it used to, and how was that managed?
The majority of development occurred through me, through V3 Alliance, although we did receive contributions from VLSCI, which is a University of Melbourne organisation, and at one stage we got contributions from Nectar team, also at University of Melbourne, and also VLSCI, like I said, contracted Common Code to work on Karaage for at one stage. But yeah, most of the development was via me though.
All right, well, we'll 10.2. So we'll come back here at 10.2. If I take nothing else away, I'm going to take away git-ammend and actually try that out and just double check that, because that was pretty impressive for me. So yeah, a big round of applause.